some places are more than just cafes. They are small stages where invisible battles are fought, where dignity carries more weight than hunger, and where a single act of kindness can quietly transform a life. Tonight, at the Golden Spoon Café, one such transformation quietly unfolded, a story of empathy, silence, and the extraordinary power of simple human connection. The night had draped itself softly over the city, the streetlights flickering like distant stars caught between the buildings. The streets were unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that invites reflection or a tinge of loneliness. Inside the Golden Spoon Café, the glow from the large windows spilled across the sidewalks, a warm beacon amidst the cool air. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries mingled with the faint hum of conversation, creating a cocoon of gentle normalcy in a world that often moved too fast. Only a handful of patrons lingered in the dimly lit space. Their voices rose and fell like soft waves, and the clinking of cups against saucers punctuated the silence. Among these few, one table drew hardly any attention. There an old man sat alone, shoulders slightly hunched, hands resting on the table as if they were guarding something precious but long lost. His eyes roamed the café, briefly catching on small details, but never settling on any one thing. He seemed worn down, not by physical exhaustion, but by something deeper, a fatigue that money could never erase, the weight of years stacked silently upon him. Occasionally, he adjusted his threadbare coat, each movement careful, almost ritualistic. The way he folded and unfolded the fabric seemed to echo a memory invisible to the world. It was as if he carried the weight of 1,000 forgotten moments, and yet no one could tell from looking at him. At the same time, a young waiter moved silently among the tables. His presence wasn't loud or demanding. He didn't command attention, nor did he require recognition. But his eyes, calm, observant, and unhurried, took in everything. He noticed the subtle tremor in the old man's hands, the hesitance in the way he glanced at the menu, the invisible heaviness in his posture. The young man had long understood that the hardest battles are rarely visible. Hunger, poverty, loneliness, these were not always written on faces or announced with dramatic gestures. Often they were quiet, subtle, and relentless. And he had learned that the simplest acts, delivered with genuine care, could sometimes weigh more than all the words or formalities in the world. Tonight, he would demonstrate that truth. He approached the table with a measured, respectful calm, placing the menu gently in front of the old man without a word. The man's eyes flickered down at it, the movement hesitant, almost burdened by choices he knew he could scarcely afford. The waiter, sensing the invisible weight, didn't bombard him with questions or recommendations. Instead, he spoke softly, simply. "Sir, today our soup is particularly comforting." There was no pressure, no expectation, only a quiet offering of care. The words themselves seemed modest, almost ordinary, but carried a resonance that the old man could feel immediately. His eyes lifted to meet the waiter's, and for the first time that evening, a faint acknowledgment passed between them, subtle but meaningful. The waiter returned to his other duties, but never let his gaze wander entirely. He understood that kindness is often more about presence than action. Sometimes, just being there, noticing, and acknowledging someone quietly is enough to shift the gravity of their day. When the soup finally arrived, the old man's hands hovered over the bowl, reluctant to begin. Each spoonful seemed heavier than food could account for, laden with memories, regrets, and a lifetime of quiet endurance. The waiter watched without intruding, knowing that this meal was not meant to fill a stomach, but to bridge the chasm of years of solitude and hardship. The old man paused between bites, staring into the golden broth as if it contained the reflections of his life. He remembered moments long past, small joys, missed opportunities, the faces of loved ones who were no longer present. Each spoonful became a ritual, a silent conversation with the world he had almost stopped noticing. Meanwhile, the cafe around him continued in its gentle rhythm. Cups clinked, chairs scraped, and faint laughter rose from nearby tables. Yet in this small corner, a quiet transformation was taking place. It was invisible to the casual observer, yet profound in its simplicity. As the old man ate, the waiter returned briefly, silently refilling the cup of water and adjusting the napkin beside him. His movements were careful, unobtrusive, yet each gesture radiated a respect that transcended mere etiquette. The old man, in response, allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile, a flicker of connection that the world outside the cafe might never witness. When the meal was over, the old man reached into his pocket, hesitating. The worn fabric of his coat betrayed his modest means. The waiter approached again, placing the bill gently before him, but then smiled and said softly, "Sir, tonight this meal is on us. Your presence reminds us why we do what we do." No announcement, no clamor, just quiet, profound truth. The old man's eyes glistened with tears he had not expected to shed. "Thank you," he whispered, a single word laden with years of gratitude, sorrow, and relief. The simple exchange carried a weight far greater than the sum of the ingredients on his plate. The waiter returned to his rounds, blending seamlessly with the rhythm of the cafe. He did not perceive himself as extraordinary, yet he had become exactly that for someone who had almost forgotten the tenderness of human connection. In that moment, he shone as a quiet star in a world that often overlooked the subtle heroism of everyday acts. Throughout the evening, the cafe remained a microcosm of life itself. Conversations buzzed, laughter and chatter intertwined with the low hum of background music. Outside, the city pulsed with its own restless energy. But inside, within those walls and amidst the gentle glow, time seemed to bend. Small, unseen victories took place. Some people were given dignity, others a brief reprieve from loneliness, and all experienced the unspoken power of empathy. The old man lingered for a while longer, sipping his coffee slowly, savoring the warmth more than the flavor. His fingers traced the rim of the cup, absorbing a comfort he had long denied himself. Each sip was a quiet reassurance that the world still contained spaces of care, places where kindness was not conditional or performative, but lived and breathed in real time. As he finally rose to leave, he paused near the counter, glancing back at the young waiter. No words were exchanged beyond the shared understanding in their eyes. Yet a bridge had been built between two lives that might otherwise have passed each other unnoticed. The cafe had been transformed, if only for a moment, into a sanctuary of human connection, a stage where empathy and dignity held sway. Walking out into the night, the old man carried with him not just the memory of a meal, but the invisible weight lifted from a lifetime of quiet endurance. He walked taller, his steps steadier, his presence no longer defined by the years of struggle he had carried alone. Meanwhile, the young waiter continued his work, moving among tables with that same gentle attentiveness, unaware that he had delivered something far greater than food. His small acts, executed with sincerity and care, had reminded someone that the world still contained moments of grace and recognition. Across the cafe, other patrons noticed nothing, yet each of them was subtly affected, if only by proximity to an act of authentic humanity. They sipped their drinks, whispered to friends or scrolled on their phones, oblivious to the quiet miracle that had unfolded just a few feet away. Life, in its ordinary rhythm, had played witness to something extraordinary, and as the night wore on, the cafe emptied slowly. The soft glow from the windows dimmed, leaving shadows that seemed to hug the corners of the room. The young waiters stacked chairs, wiped down tables, and finally paused to look around. He thought little of what had happened, yet the atmosphere of the cafe seemed heavier with spoken stories, and lighter with the release of unburdened hearts. In that quiet, he understood, though not in conscious thought, that life's most profound moments often occurred in the smallest spaces. They didn't require an audience or applause. They simply needed attention, awareness, and a willingness to act with quiet integrity. The Golden Spoon Café closed its doors for the night, but its legacy lingered. Invisible threads of connection had been woven, subtle yet resilient. One human heart had been lifted, another had given without expectation, and the world outside continued, unknowingly touched by the ripple of their interaction. It was a reminder that in ordinary places, extraordinary things occur. That sometimes silence is louder than words, observation more powerful than judgment, and empathy more transformative than intention alone. That small gestures, when rooted in genuine care, carry the weight of miracles. The night carried on, city streets humming with their usual activity, but somewhere inside a small cafe, a tiny, transformative act had occurred, a gentle affirmation that kindness, even in the quietest forms, matters. And as the city slept, the memory of that moment endured, quietly testifying to the power of noticing, understanding, and simply being human. No one who witnessed it, or even those who didn't, could measure the impact fully. Yet for one old man, for one young waiter, and perhaps for the unseen threads connecting countless lives, the night was unforgettable. A small, simple act of recognition had reminded them both that even in solitude, human connection remained a force capable of restoring dignity, hope, and trust in the beauty of everyday life. And so the Golden Spoon Café did what it had always done best, not just serving coffee or pastries, but creating a space where human dignity, quiet heroism, and the extraordinary power of simple acts could shine through, unnoticed by many, but remembered by those whose hearts were touched.